The English power word this week, for those who are working on developing an English vocabulary, as some of us are, is synonym. The word is synonym. S-Y-N-O-N-Y-M. Synonym. So who can tell me what a synonym is? Who has a definition or an example of a synonym? Who can also say it fast? What's a synonym?
Isn't it a vowel?
No.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Synonym. Sometimes that's the same, right?
The same. Anything that says sin, S-Y-N, means is similar or same. Yeah? Synonym.
Same meaning, different words.
Same meaning, different words. That's a very wonderful, concise definition. Same meaning, different words. So a dictionary definition says that it's a word or a phrase that means exactly or nearly the same as another word or phrase in the same language. For example, shut is a synonym of close. Okay? So let's review the Beatitudes that we've studied so far, and let's do it by using synonyms. So, for example, the first one was, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What would be a synonym for poor in spirit?
Broke.
Broke?
Humble or meek.
Humble or meek, okay. Somebody in need. Blessed are those who are in need. Yeah?
Needy.
What's that?
Needy.
Needy. Blessed are the needy. That would be a good synonym for that. Yes. Well, what about the next one? Blessed are those who mourn. Right? For they will be comforted. And what would be a synonym of mourn?
Grief.
Grieve. Or grief. Yes. Who are in sorrow. Who are troubled because of something they've lost or not gotten.
Depressed?
Maybe depressed. I mean,
Depends.
It depends, yes. The blessed are those who have lost, who have experienced loss, who experience grief. Then the next one is, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. What is a synonym for meek?
Humble.
Humble, yes. Blessed are the humble. Yes? Other ideas? Humble? Maybe not pushy. Blessed are the people who are not pushy. Blessed are those who are not loud and in your face.
Maybe lowly.
Maybe lowly. Yeah, blessed are the lowly.
Timid.
Timid. Sometimes maybe timid. Yeah. Or maybe blessed are those who get things done in a quiet way, as opposed to loud and pushy. Flush. Pushy. So the next one. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. What's a synonym for righteousness? Right living. And when I talked about it, I said justice, right? Because the word righteousness and justice are the same biblically, but righteousness, it tends to be seen as right living personally, and justice is right living socially. They're actually the same word. You'll be filled with it. Then, blessed are the, verse 7, blessed are the merciful. What is a synonym for merciful?
Kind-hearted.
Kind, yes. Blessed are the kind, for they will be shown kindness. Good. I use synonyms a lot when I'm writing my paraphrase each week. And again, I commend it to you as a good Bible study tool. paraphrasing is a great way to work on the scripture. So the NIV, which is what's in the Message Guide this week, reads for our verse 8, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And then if you look on the Message Guide itself, you'll see what I did with pure in heart in the authorized Boydston paraphrase. "Blessed are those whose hearts and minds sincerely line up with God and His ways. Such people will have an audience with God and actually get to see Him." Such people will have an audience with God and actually get to see Him. This is actually a very tough verse to paraphrase because the word pure has so many different nuances to it. Biblically, it has a lot of different meanings that kind of get mixed together and moved around. But one of them would be clean, as in washed clothes. You could say my clothes are pure.
Sanitized.
Sanitized, yeah. Yeah, that would actually be very good. My clothes are clean and sanitized. And then another word is purified. And William Barclay, the great Scottish New Testament scholar, pointed out, and he used this example, he said, he talked about a purified army. That word would be used of the army if they had been able to weed out all of the cowards. It was considered to be a pure army. So anybody that wasn't capable or able or willing to fight, they were out, and so the army was pure. And then there's another word that's similar, meaning pure metal is the idea. It means it's not an alloy.
Refined.
It could have been refined in order to get to that point. So it separates all of the impurities out of it. So it's good metal. So which of these was Jesus thinking of when He said, "Blessed are the pure in heart"? Well, was He thinking of hearts that where there was no mixture of evil and holiness because all of the evil had been sanitized out, to use Alex's word? But what was the emphasis? Was He emphasizing a heart where all the less desirable things have been weeded out, like an army, which it's just to the point, to the task, people that are bold? Or was He thinking of a heart that is white as snow because it knows the forgiveness that God has given? And it's really hard to narrow down, and perhaps we don't need to narrow all this down. And so I've used the word sincerely in my paraphrase this week because it captures several of these nuances, and because throughout much of the gospel, Jesus seems to be going after the insincerity of religious people. When He talks about hearts, He's often pointing out the insincerity in their hearts. And He's annoyed with religious facades. Jesus is annoyed with people who act religious on the outside, but inside they are not what they are on the outside. He is looking for sincere people who line up with God and His ways. So I've added that phrase, line up with God and His ways, in my paraphrase, to clarify the focus of what Jesus is doing here, based on Jesus' overall message in the Gospels, and especially in the Beatitudes. I mean, none of the Beatitudes are freestanding, are they? They are not to be interpreted apart from the others. They are all commentary on what constitutes life in Jesus' kingdom of heaven, in God and His ways. Blessed are those whose hearts and minds sincerely line up with God and His ways. Such people will have an audience with God and actually get to see Him. That is, those who are consumed with the prospect of relating to God and living life with Him will see Him. Ultimately, God graciously gives us what we set our hearts on having. Hear that again. Ultimately, God gives us what we set our hearts on having. If we set our hearts on living independent lives apart from Him and apart from His plan, we get what we want. He'll let us do that. But if we set our hearts on knowing Him, we get what we want. We get to know Him. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now, the pure in heart are not perfect people, but they have struggles, right? So some of them are quite significant struggles. But the purity is a matter of being set on living for God as the defining priority in life. Even if there are setbacks, even if there's a rough road to get there. I keep thinking of King David in the Old Testament. King David was, he's often referred to as the greatest king and maybe one of the greatest characters in the history of Israel. But King David was a bloodthirsty jerk. He was a knucklehead, and he was a royal screw-up. I would hesitate to use King David as a character model for anything, I would not use him as a Sunday school hero. The whole downfall of Israel can be traced back to actions that were initiated and precedents that were established by King David. But in Acts 13:22 we read, and this is retelling the story of Israel, and this, God removed Saul and replaced him with David, a man about whom God said, I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. A man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. Now, man of heart means that he was a man of God's choosing. And the reason why God chose to work with David is that even when David messed up, he always turned back to God. He had a heart for God. Morally, David was not a pure man. But he was set on aligning his life with God and his ways. That was his purpose. That was his intention. And that's a kind of purity of intention or sincerity that Jesus seems to be talking about. For none of us have pure hearts, at least not unless we're talking about the purity that belongs to Christ himself. And because we are connected to him, when God looks at us, he sees Christ. And we're that close because Christ is our friend. Christ is connected with us. When God, the judge, looks at us, he sees Christ. So blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. So the question is, are you seeing God? And what does that mean anyway? How is it that we see God when our hearts are pure? And I can think of at least 3 ways that we see God, just off the top of my head. And perhaps you will add to my list as we go along here at the end. The first one is this. We see him working around us. We see God when we see him working around us. We see him working around us. And that's because we tend to see what we're looking for. A few years ago, we used to talk about God sightings. And that was a way of encouraging people to look for God at work in the ordinary, day in and day out routine of life. But the fact is that even when we don't see God, he is still at work in every situation. He's still at work in every place. Some people will talk about a situation and they'll say, wow, God really showed up. You know, God really showed up to church today. And I'm not fond of that phrase, God showed up. It's sloppy theology. Because God always shows up. Because God is already there. He's always there, and he's always here, and there's no escaping from him. It's not like he pops in and shows up randomly. It's not that he shows up sometimes and other times he doesn't show up. Rather, it's that there are times when we are more focused and we see him. We see what He's doing. We see that He's at work. And usually that's because we want to see it. We see, if we want to, we get to see it. Our hearts are straining to catch a glimpse. And there it is, the God side. So I would challenge you to turn your heart to Him and to start looking for what He's up to this week. Make a mental or a written list and share what you are seeing God doing in your life, in your situation, in your surroundings. Even if things are falling apart, you can still look and see what God is doing in your life in the midst of the chaos, the craziness. And I know that some of you are experiencing some real trauma in your life right now. But God is still there. He's still working. So look for the ways that God is at work in the middle of that situation you're in. Secondly, number 2, when Jesus says that the pure in heart will see God, I'm sensing that this has some relational dynamics. We see Him as we are seen by Him as friends. We see Him as we are seen by Him as friends. I picked up on this aspect of the word pure in my paraphrase. Blessed are those whose hearts and minds sincerely line up with God in His ways. Such people will have an audience with God and actually get to see Him. We actually get to see God because we are His friends. And when we show up at His door, He doesn't hesitate to invite us in and have some family time with us, fellowship time, a time together. We have access. A natural audience with God is not strained. No matter how bad you are or whatever you've done, your access to God is not cut off. The Creator, the King of the universe, is there welcoming you, and He's welcoming us as His friends and as His children. For we are His extended family. And that's a blessing, to use Jesus' own words. So the encouragement is to enjoy your status. Enjoy His presence. Don't hesitate to share your hurts and your concerns with Him, as well as your joys and your successes. Thirdly, we will see Him at Christ's return. We will see Him at Christ's return. And just as we see God now in small ways, our vision will be so much clearer than it is now. And at times, at that time, others may turn from God in fear because of judgment. But the pure in heart will be standing there looking for God. Because you've been trained to look for God. That's what you're looking for. At Judgment Day, you'll still be looking for Him. You'll still be looking to Him. And consequently, you'll be seeing Him in His awesomeness. Not because you are better than anyone else, but because you have embraced Christ. His life, His sacrifice, His resurrection, His ways. Again, we will be able to stand in confidence because of what He has done and how His benefits extend to us. In spite of the fact that we are not so much different than King David. We are recovering bloodthirsty jerks, knuckleheads, and royal screw-ups. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And that is the good news. So, how else is it that you think the pure in heart might get to see God? Does anyone want to add a thought here? Or maybe a question or about the passage, or maybe you have additional insight about the whole package there? Or perhaps maybe you have a God sighting of your own that you want to share. Someone you've seen God work around.
I think as you see God in other people around you who are following God, who are doing what they are being told to do by God, you can sense that.
so that would be like number 4. We see him in other people. We see him at work in other people. That kind of encourages us and sparks life within us as well. Good. How else do we see Christ or see God?
I think to me is if I see God as my friend or father, I sense that it has a chemistry. Some people you are easy to relate to. You know, I have 4 to 6 dogs. I sense that 2 dogs are very relating to me. Like you understand, like if you're married a couple, you understand.
You have a chemistry that's at work there, and so you're saying that
it's a communication.
You have a chemistry with God.
I know that what He wants me to do, or what He will be happy about me. You know, if I did something wrong, I know that God doesn't like that. You know, that's the parent and child parts. You know, my mom doesn't like me to do this. You know, that kind of chemistry.
I wonder if that chemistry as well is a freeing kind of chemistry, so that you're not always worried about what I do wrong with God. You know.
Right. It's not just all.
No, I know you're not saying that, but it's
yeah.
just it's more of you know His love, and so you see Him.
I'm inspired by my daughter because even though she went through some really difficult years a few years ago, she just sees God opening doors all the time for her and leading her this place and that place and to a church and with people, and I'm just inspired by that, because she'll say, this is what God is doing in my life this week, you know. And
She's tuned into seeing that.
yeah.
Yeah, she's good at that. Someone once asked me, and I'm not as good at that. I mean, I don't always see what God's doing in the immediate context. Sometimes I can say, oh yeah, this is God working in this context. But sometimes it's just looking in the mirror that I can only see the rear view mirror. Yeah, not the new mirror. But maybe that's another way. The rear view mirror, I can look back and I say, you know, God was really at work there, and He steered us this direction, that direction. And so I'm more inclined to see Him in the mirror.
And maybe it's when you go through a difficult time in life and you really cry out to God and He helps you, and then you just keep going.
Yeah. When you go through the difficult time in life and you cry out to God, the side benefit is that not only are you rescued, but that in the process, God trains us to see Him better. He established a pattern, yes. Yeah. And that's why those who have gone through a lot of pain are perhaps the ones that have the most to give. I mean, it's easier to see God working through those people because they've been trained through pain.